All right, time to jump into some controversy. This is getting a lot of attention online, and I thought it was worth breaking down my perspective on this, as well as what some people are saying online. But Democratic Senate primary candidate for Maine, Graham Platner, is in some hot water right now over a tattoo that was revealed in a leaked wedding video that he himself presented to a podcast that he was on because he knew it was going to be leaked eventually, and explained. So I'll get to what this tattoo is, all the discussions around that. Before I get to any of that, though, I think it's worth acknowledging that this is in a primary race. So the primary for Senate in Maine, Graham Platner is the more left-wing progressive candidate in the race, the working class candidate. He's backed by several unions so far, backed by people like Bernie Sanders and a couple other Democrats as well. I'll get to that. But the other candidate in the race, the other main candidate, is Janet Mills. Janet Mills is the governor of Maine, the Chuck Schumer approved candidate. She just decided to get in recently after Graham Platner was receiving all this attention. And she's kind of what you expect, a standard Democrat, defender of the status quo. Recent decisions like this, Governor Mills will not sign bill restricting police cooperation with ICE, so underhandedly helping Trump in some ways. After this happened as well, she condemned this. Portland City Council votes to divest from companies doing business with Israel. Portland, Maine, of course. Belfast City Council also voted to divest from companies associated with the Israeli military. And then Governor Mills came out to condemn those votes, saying, "I can say that I hear you, and I can tell you I will not support any similar divestments at the state level should any such legislation reach my desk." So your typical status quo, defender of Israel, even during a genocide, Democrat. That's the other choice in the race. I point this out before we get to the Graham Platner stuff because Kamala Harris, during the election, had a lot of red flags. Her refusal to really acknowledge what was happening, what Israel was doing in Gaza, was a major problem. Yet still, I encourage people to obviously support Kamala Harris over Donald Trump because an election is it's choices. What is your best choice in that situation? Much like now, you have Graham Platner, who, look, we'll get to this tattoo, but comparing the records here, like, let's be clear, the contrast isn't as stark between Mills and Platner as it is between, Donald Trump and literally anybody else. Yet still, there is a difference here, and it is a policy difference. So let's get to Graham Platner. First, this is what initially was coming out. Maine Senate candidate promoted violent political action since deleted online posts. So stuff like this. If people, quote, expect to fight fascism without a good semi-automatic rifle, they ought to do some reading of history. He wrote in a one since deleted post. In another, he said that an armed working class is a requirement for economic justice. He called himself a communist and said that all police are bastards. So a position of being incredibly anti-fascist to the point of saying that you should be armed against fascists. Also embraced the Antifa super soldier label. So here on one hand, you have Antifa super soldier, far left radical, but also a Nazi. So Maine U.S. Senate candidate apologizes for a tattoo with Nazi links. Now, I'm going to show you this tattoo, and there's really going to be a divide here. People that are deep into history, deep into Nazi iconography, are able to spot this stuff because not for any nefarious reasons, but just are more knowledgeable in the area. And then there are going to be others, which I think is the vast, vast majority of you, who are going to have no idea that this is a Nazi symbol. So Platner stated he got the tattoo while drunk as a young Marine on shore leave in Croatia and was unaware of its Nazi affiliation until recently. Now, people have said, well, you should definitely have known what this is because of several movies have displayed it. I don't pause videos to zoom in on symbols. That's just me. Again, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have been aware of this, or it would be nice if most of us were aware of these sorts of things, but the reality is that most of us are not. It's a skull and crossbones. And he mistakenly got it. I mean, this has been sold at Walmart on t-shirts because they didn't know until a blogger pointed it out. And this was them taking a picture of it here. And then they eventually had to pull it down. Like, it's a skull and to most people, this is a skull and crossbones. So Platner, in a statement to the AP, said it was not until I started hearing from reporters and DC insiders that I realized this tattoo resembled a Nazi symbol. I absolutely would not have gone through life having this on my chest if I knew that, and to insinuate that I did is disgusting. I'm already planning to get this removed, which he, in fact, did. He says he no longer has it. Here's it covered up. I don't want to. We don't need to zoom into a man's chest here, but it's covered up. I will link to below the video if you want to analyze the new tattoo. But that's where we stand. So Emma Vigeland, I think, had a good take on this, saying how many people get tattoos that they thought looked cool but didn't understand the meaning of? How many vets took mercenary work for a period because the U.S. doesn't support them? How many young men have shit posted online? Do we want an authentic working class party or not? So this is speaking to all things that Graham Platner, of course, did, has since grown from, moved on from. I think that's been clear in how he's run his campaign so far. But maybe he's a secret Nazi. What do I know? And he decided to run in the Democratic Party instead of the Republican Party for some reason. But Dan Caldwell here writing, I don't care for Platner, but it was fairly common during the height of the global war on terror for boot Marines to get stupid tattoos like this because they looked cool. I know several Hispanic Marines who got the Nazi SS lightning bolts tattooed on their arms because they were in scout snipers. People get tattoos thinking they look cool, not knowing what the hell they are. This happens, I'm sure this happens all the time. So, as I wrote, if a fascist wants to attain a position of power, why would they choose to be a secret Nazi Democrat instead of just a Republican? Case in point, people like this. This man said he was a Nazi on a Nazi streak, claimed that MLK Jr. Day and Juneteenth need to be eviscerated, and used racial slurs against Indians, Chinese people, and African Americans. He is still employed by the Trump administration. He's been the White House liaison for DHS since February. Also, how about Pete Hegseth? Trump's controversial Pentagon pick. This is a man who is so controversial that the Nazi tattoos didn't even make the subheading. Vice President cast tie-breaking vote for Fox News host despite allegations of sexual assault and alcohol abuse. You have to scroll down to learn that extremism experts raised alarms about Hegseth's apparent affinity for far-right symbols, noting that his tattoo sleeve featured at least 2 images associated with far-right and neo-Nazi groups. Now, here's the difference. Pete Hegseth carries himself like a Nazi. That, to me, is different than somebody who has Reddit posts discussing how much he hates fascists, who happens to have a skull and crossbones that is a Nazi symbol and didn't realize it. Those are 2 very different situations. If instead Graham Platner's entire history and advocacy was for right-wing policy and being anti-Semitic, being insane, anti-immigrant, then yeah, you'd have a great case against Graham Platner. So far, we're looking at a tattoo. Now, I will say, look, if there's a candidate who's like Graham Platner, who's a working class candidate, is not, bought and paid for by various corporate interests, and doesn't have a Nazi tattoo, good. Then him instead. But currently, that person does not exist in the main race, in the main Democratic primary race. And if someone else happens to come up, and I do believe the cutoff for the primary date already happened, or it's coming up soon. So that person, if they're not already in, they're going to have to get in shortly. But that person currently does not exist. So when we get down to an election, someone that got a regrettable, horrible tattoo that has now covered it up, I think, personally, I believe is a better choice than your standard cookie cutter Democrat that we've seen has already led to people like Donald Trump. Now, Graham Platner was on Pod Save America. This is where he was the one, their campaign were the ones that brought this video to Pod Save because they knew it was going to be leaked and they wanted to get out ahead of it. Here he is discussing it.
In 2007, I was a machine gun section leader with Kilo Company 3rd Battalion 8th Marines. We were on the 2-2 Mu. And it was my 3rd deployment. My previous 2 had been to Fallujah and then Ramadi, 2006. And we went ashore in Split, Croatia, myself and a few of the other machine gun squad leaders. And we got very inebriated. And we did what Marines on liberty do, and we decided to go get a tattoo. And we went to a tattoo parlor in Split, Croatia, and we chose a terrifying looking skull and crossbones off the wall because we were Marines, and skulls and crossbones are a pretty standard military thing, and we got those tattoos. And then we all moved on with our lives. And I actually joined the Army after that, where I had to go to MEPS. I got screened. Later on, I got a security clearance and a full screen when I went to work for the State Department as a contractor doing security for the ambassador to Afghanistan in 2018. And I've also just lived my entire life like a regular person with a skull and crossbones on their chest, which by that I mean taking my shirt off, performing Miley Cyrus songs in front of my extended family, and to my sister-in-law, and just taking my shirt off at the beach.
Right,
and
presumably going to the beach, yeah.
I mean, I went to college, I went to the gym, I did all the things, and at no point in this entire experience of my life did anybody ever once say, "Hey, you're a Nazi." It never came up until we got wind that in the opposition research, somebody was shopping the idea that I was a secret Nazi with a hidden Nazi tattoo. And I can honestly say that if I was trying to hide it, I've not been doing a very good job for the past 18 years.
Yeah.
So
you're
yeah.
a self-described communist, but also a Nazi.
I will say the fact that I've managed to go from communist to Nazi in the space of 4 days, according to the people who are trying to do this to me, I find to be quite a spectacular turn of events, but
All right, so I'm going to get to some reactions from politicians that endorsed him, as well as some other opinions online, but it is ridiculous what they are trying to do to this man. So he was a communist. No, now he's a Nazi. It's just like, this is the Oppo research that a lot of it has really ramped up since Janet Mills entered the race. I wonder why. Where they're just trying to see what sticks. Oh, the anti-fascist, communist, socialist stuff didn't work. Okay, well now how about he's a Nazi? Like they're just trying to see what can possibly work. And when you have somebody who was largely a normal person before, there's probably going to be something. Now, you would hope it's not going to be a Nazi tattoo because that is a really, really bad thing to have in your closet. But again, considering the entire context of what we know of Graham Platner, the tattoo does seem very out of place with the rest of his, online past profile. But some reactions here. So Ruben Gallego, who is a politician that I believe endorsed Platner, which is why this came up. But it says a Marine. So Gallego's a Marine who suffered from PTSD on Graham Platner's post an apology. Quote, hopefully he's gotten the therapy he needs. Everyone has a right to grow out of their stupidity. And I think voters should take the opportunity to evaluate that. Also, Martin Heinrich, the Democratic senator in New Mexico, told Semaphore on Tuesday that he still supports Platner, though he also warned potential future candidates to not spend a lot of time on Reddit and distance himself from some of Platner's statements. Do I like any of it? Of course not. Do I like what he's campaigning on and the way he's connecting to working class voters? That's the piece that's been missing from our party. The Democratic Party needs to be big enough to accept people who have had hard lives, who have made mistakes and have actually owned up to those mistakes. And that's what he's done. And Bernie Sanders saying he defends Graham Platner, calling him an excellent candidate. There's a young man who served his country in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he went through some really difficult experiences seeing friends of his killed or whatever. Which, when I first read that quote, I'm sure it didn't come off as flip it, in person, but seeing his friends killed or whatever is just a hilarious quote. And in spite of all that, he had the courage to run. I personally think he's an excellent candidate. I'm going to support him, and I look forward to him becoming the next senator in the state of Maine. Crystal Ball, defending Platner, saying, for me personally, I'll take a candidate with a regrettable tattoo over one who has steadfastly supported genocide. Speaking of Janet Mills. Emma Vigeland again saying, censorious hall monitor liberalism that refuses to accept growth in people unless you're a corporate centrist and all is forgiven, just to ask Cuomo supporters, is far more of a threat to the Democratic Party's chances in the future than anything dug up on Graham Platner. Austin Allman writing here, I don't know, it seems to me like he's just a guy. Accidental far-right tattoo and other ex-military baggage. Far-left Reddit posts. Voted for Susan Collins multiple times. Embarrassing drunk wedding videos. Sounds like a guy from Maine. I think the issue here is whether you think running a guy is good. Personally, I like to see a lot more people who clearly did not spend their life preparing to run for office in politics. and I think it might work well in this new political reality, but it is a risk. I completely agree with this. People that spend their lives groomed to make it in politics are the exact people that you cannot trust. But your average person, working class individual who has had life experience that is more akin to a normal person's life experience, I think those people are generally more trustworthy. That doesn't mean they're trustworthy in every case, but I think they are generally people that you can trust more than your typical politician who went to Harvard Law and it went through that whole process. So this is a situation where, look, if you truly believe that Graham Platner is a secret Nazi, then yeah, don't support him. Don't advocate for him. If that's what you truly believe, obviously Janet Mills is preferable to an actual Nazi. I hope that's clear. But if you think, hey, this is clearly based on his posting history that has been revealed, based on what he's advocating for, who he is, his experiences, that he's not a secret Nazi, and in fact, this was just a stupid tattoo that he has now had covered up, then I think the choice in this primary election, at least so far, is clear. Maybe somebody else will pop up between now and June who's a better candidate, who doesn't have a Nazi tattoo that they have to cover up. But until that happens, this is an election where you have choices. And I think Graham Platner so far appears to be the better choice over Janet Mills. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and check out some of the other videos I have on this channel.